Who here first watched WWF when it went on Channel 4 in 2000? So I was trying to explain this to Mick about the idea that WWF was on Sky, and then Channel 4 took over the contract, and the first pay-per-view was the Royal Rumble. That man loves the 2001. I actually remember, so my mum, she was like, okay, you can stay up, watch the Royal Rumble. And I'm watching it, and she's falling asleep on the sofa because, you know, she has problems. And I'm watching the Royal Rumble, and then Mae Young comes out for the Miss Rumble 2000 swimsuit contest. I have never let out a higher pitched scream in my human life, and my mum sat up like the Undertaker and went, "Oh my God, Kenneth, it's just a pair of tits. Shut up." So with that,
you didn't know they were prosthetic boobs either, did you? They were
like, what did the real ones look like? Sorry, Leon.
They're spectacular.
So a lot of people first saw WWF when it came on Channel 4, because it was network TV, everybody got it. The first pay-per-view is Royal Rumble. It's you as Cactus Jack against Triple H in New York Street Fight, Madison Square Garden. A lot of people got into wrestling on that match. And that was as you were winding down and you were going to retire. And after you retired at WrestleMania 2000, you became the commissioner a couple of months later. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to retire and then the decision to very quickly come back and be in that world but not be in the ring?
Yeah, my knees were giving me a lot of trouble. Biggest mistake I made is that I came into WWE, I don't know how many stones this is, but I was about 280 pounds. And I felt like I had to be, at my highest I was maybe 315 in WCW. And I found I worked really well, my wind was good at about 280. And I felt like I had to be that heavy in order to look like a challenge to The Undertaker, because he was about 5 or 6 inches taller than me, much better structure than I did. The biggest mistake I made is that when I really got over, when it didn't matter as much what you looked like, because the audience is with you, instead of gaining 40 pounds, I should have dropped 30 pounds. I should have worked at 250, and I would have had my knees wouldn't have been as bad. If my knees wouldn't have been as bad, then I wouldn't have had to lead with my head as much as I did, because I made conscious efforts. I was like, all right, I can't give people the match that I want to. You know, I can't do the things I want to do, but I can take chair shots. And I started having, we didn't know as much then as we do now about CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And I say the words out loud because I figure as long as I can continue to say those words out loud, I think I'm going to be okay. And one thing I should probably tell you guys is that this is a serious, CTE's serious business. It's not something you're supposed to get better from. But I find that doing these shows is the best form of like mental gymnastics. That's what Chris Nowinski, who the co-founder of the center, told me. I said, Chris, I feel like I'm getting better. And he said, well, you're out there every night. He goes, you're doing 3 things. He goes, you're remembering stories you've worked on, you're working on new stories, and you are thinking on your feet. You're playing off the crowd. You combine those 3 elements. He goes, it's like doing mental gymnastics. So essentially, you guys have paid good money to watch me do rehabilitation up here. So I appreciate that. Thank you. But
And I will not refund any of you.
so I know Mr. McMahon gets a bad rap about being cruel and heartless. And I'm sure other people could tell you stories that might give that credence. But in my case, I told him, I was embarrassed. I did a match where Al Snow and I, as the best friends, wrestled Bob and Crash Holly and I think Crash caught my foot and spun me around, and usually I would come in with the left-handed clothesline, and on that night I fell down, my knees couldn't support me, and I was like, I really felt like I'd slipped physically. And I told Mr. McMahon I thought I needed to retire. And I told him about my knees. He goes, Mickey, you need to lose some weight. And I said, Vince, sometimes I can't remember where I live. And he looked at me and I said, sometimes I drive an hour past my house and I don't even realize it. He looked at me and said, you just had your last match. That was where his thoughts were, even though at that time I was one of the biggest draws they had. And I would have left right then had Steve Austin not had that neck injury. And then they realized they needed something to get them through until Steve healed up, and that's where me and Triple H stepped right into that main event role that allowed two things to happen. Allowed Triple H to ascend as a single star, because he'd been a huge deal as part of DX, but he hadn't had that real defining run as a singles heel. And it also allowed me to retire the first time. At the height, to have the type of matches that I wanted to have on my way out. And I did drop a bunch of weight to get ready for the Royal Rumble and the No Way Out match. And I also had in Triple H an opponent who really specialized in playing to people's strengths, working around their weaknesses. He was a great ring general, and we had great chemistry together. We brought out the best in each other, and it was like that best case scenario where we elevated each other on my way out.
And then you retire at No Way Out 2000, February 2000. It's like, I'm done, I'm not wrestling anymore. 38 days later, you are announced as the final participant in the Fatal 4-Way main event of WrestleMania 2000. There's a McMahon in every corner. Right. Talk to us a little bit about, taking that time and deciding now is the right time.
All right, so people want to say I was a hypocrite. I mean, I went out and I specifically said, I'm not going to be one of those guys who prostitutes his name and comes back 6 months later. And doggone it, I didn't. It didn't take me 6 months. It took me 6 weeks. But I defy anyone. I'm telling you, it is a fact. And people would criticize me. I go, let me tell you something, brother. Mr. McMahon called you up and asked you to cut his lawn. You'd say, how quickly do you want me there, And so Jim Ross calls me and he goes, yeah, Mick, we got some ideas for you at WrestleMania. I said, okay, you want me to host something? And he goes, actually, we're thinking about you, Big Show, Steve, and he lays it out. I said, but I just retired. And so I will go down in history. You can ask JR when he's here in February. Has anyone besides Mick Foley tried to talk you out of putting him in the main event at WrestleMania? And I did. I put up a fight. And Vince really wanted to make that happen for me. He really wanted me to be in a main event before I retired, and we ended up, making the best of it. It was a pretty good match. I showed up about 20 pounds heavier than I had been at No Way Out. My heart wasn't really in it. There was that spot where Triple H had the Rock on a table. I went up to the second rope, but I swear it looked like he was a football field away from me. I thought, there's no way. There's no way I can make it. And I took off, and this is where, Anaheim, California, okay? So I like to think that I've got a certain commitment, whether it's to character, family. And so I took off from that second turnbuckle, and I missed by about 4 feet, right? One of the things you don't know about that table is it only breaks if you land on it flat. If you hit it on the corner, it's like that brick house that the third little pig built, right? It does not move. And so I came up, my torso hit that thing, my pelvis. I thought I broke my pelvis. And the only thing I could think of, and at that time, that was the biggest match in the biggest year of WWE's, history. So it was my biggest move on the biggest night of the company's history. I hit, my body ricocheted off that. I'm laying on the ground. I think I have a broken pelvis, and all I could think of, my broken sternum rather, the only thought that was running through my mind was, I don't think I'm gonna make it to Disneyland tomorrow.
One other thing, the maniac in the back who wanted us to book Vince Russo had said that something that Russo had said a long time ago that you were originally maybe going to be in the main event of WrestleMania the year before with Austin and Rock, and it ended up being them one-on-one. Is that true?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a three-way at a certain point, and he did. And I think Shawn will admit that there used to be something known as bad Shawn Michaels. And yeah, I loved working with Shawn, but one of the things from the Mind Games match that he recalls so fondly is that he was the champion. I'm getting ready to wrestle him, and I bring up this idea, and I go, you know, Shawn, how sometimes, occasionally, you get upset with your opponents? Is he just browbeaten Vader, Leon White, right? Leon White, at SummerSlam. And so I created a spot meant to look like Shawn Michaels was snapping. And I remember Tommy Drew, so Shawn went and I shot him and he did a handstand, expected me to come underneath him, but I didn't. And when he turned around, he started yelling at me and he started slapping me in the face. I took 2 or 3 slaps and I stepped back and I leveled him with probably the best forearm I've ever thrown. And I remember Tommy Dreamer about 18 months later going, Mick, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He goes, how did you keep your temper under control when Shawn started browbeating you out of there? I went, what? Because you know when you missed that spot, Shawn started slapping you? I said, that was a spot. Like, we botched a spot intentionally. And he looked at me, he did like the fish hook in the mouth thing, like he bought it 100%. Because what I was hoping for was that it would give that match an extra element of realism, and it did. Like one of those defining moments, I think, in big matches is where the audience, even if they're there to chant, this is awesome, every once in a while they turn to their friends or even think to themselves, I think this is real. And that was a moment where everyone kind of thought to themselves or looked at their friend and went, ooh, the stuff is on now. But Shawn did, he wanted to go to bat for me. And he thought it should be me and Steve in the main event. And so Shawn got half of his wish, which was to have it a singles match, but it turned out to be Steve and Rock, which was the right call. It was the right call. They let me referee that match, and I swear to you, it was the loudest response I'd ever heard in my life. Just being in there, I think it was in Philadelphia, and it was just phenomenal, the type of sound coming, like I couldn't believe it. And I remember Steve, you know, when he got the finish, they looked at me, thank you, kid, like, and it felt like, it was like a great moment just to be in there. So I did get that moment, but it stuck in Vince's mind that he owed me a Mania, and so they gave it to me in 2000. And answer your earlier question, I went off, I did a meet and greet at Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, which is one of the top amusement parks in the United States, and I had brought a hair clipper, a shaver with me. And when I finished the Q&A, I was trading out a Q&A for like 4 days at the park, all expenses paid, food and everything. I took a shaver, I shaved off all my hair. My hair had been long for the entirety of my career. I shaved it all off, and that was absolutely my sign to myself that I would never do anything, ever, in public again. Ever. And 2 days after I shaved my head, signifying I would never do anything in public again, I got a phone call, and the phone voice to the other end went, hey, pal, how'd you like to be the commissioner? And I said, okay. So I showed up. And I showed up and I became the WWE commissioner.
So you become the commissioner, and you had this T-shirt, Commissioner, and like the thing, because you had been in these street fights and all these Hell in a Cells, and now you were like comedy guy. Like, you were backstage with like your own miniature Hell in a Cell office. You would have an office in a toilet. You were doing stuff with Edge and Christian and Kurt Angle. So you like even though you did comedy in '99 when you had Socko, you like went for comedy in 2000. What was the mindset behind you doing that when you came back?
Oh man, I had free run. Like they didn't tell me what to do. They rarely scripted anything. They would just tell me like the end goal, and I just tried something. I was really adamant that I not be portrayed as the toughest guy in the building. I was like, I'm here to put people over, and I also had this idea, like, you know what? This is who I really am, right? This is closer, the commissioner, much closer. If mankind, and especially the dark mankind, was me, like 310, then I had to really work on doing things to make that character dark and deranged. Cactus Jack was me with the toughness dial way up, you know. Dude Love was tiny bit me, you know. I was always more play acting. But when it came to being the commissioner, it was just a nerdier version of the real me. We may have been in the Attitude Era, but even as Mankind, when I started doing fun stuff, I think I correctly gauged that our audience was nowhere near as hip and cool as we were pretending they were. And especially when Steve Austin got over huge, that a lot of the guys in the business are like pack animals. They see something that works, boom, they gravitate towards it. I mean, when I did, seriously, I think it was in Glasgow, was the second or third stop on the first tour I did in 2011. There had to be half a dozen guys looking to do their own tours just because someone else was doing well at it. So when guys saw Stone Cold Steve Austin's flipping birds, he's using some colorful language, the whole dressing room, all the good guys were like, it was like 10 Steve lights. Nobody was nice. None of the baby faces were nice, and that's why if you go back to like the empty arena match, I made it a point to say thank you when the cab driver pulled up. Even when I commandeered the forklift that I would defeat Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson under, right? Remember, under the pallets of beer kegs, I said, let me have that, please. And I made it a point to be nice, so I'd already sown the seeds, and people could see the kind of nerdiness, the stuff that The Rock and I did was really, it was really fun. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't cutting edge as far as pushing the envelope. So when I became the commissioner, I just had a free hand. And if Vince hadn't liked what I did the first night I was doing it, I may have regrouped. But everyone liked it. You know, even I couldn't get away with saying things now that I did then. Stuff wasn't really scripted. So all I knew is that Patterson and Briscoe were going to walk into my office and they were going to demand some type of match. And they're doing the countdown. They're counting them down for 3. And I literally see there's a cactus plant in my office. 3, 2, they never say 1. They let you say it yourself. And the first thing I do, I poke the plant twice. Oh, 2 pricks. And they walked in and I said, I was just talking about you guys, you know? And if someone tried that, they would cut it right away. What the hell do you think this is? But I really just had free reign, and I connected like with Edge and Christian and with Patterson and Briscoe. Kurt Angle was like a phenomenon, not only in the ring, but at being a really humorous character. And I just had these guys to play off of. But I think the most important thing is that when I needed to get serious, I would. And I thought my idea was, if I'm not serious all the time, it puts more emphasis on those moments when I am. So I thought that I could go out there, and I thought that I had the credibility, you know, that the fans had kind of granted me to make important decisions, even if I was dressed strangely when I made them.
I mean, does anyone here know the name Jessica Fletcher? Murder, She Wrote? Now, she might have conspicuously been in like 285 crimes. This man solved Who Ran Over Steve Austin. When the WWF made the dumbest decision possible by having Rikishi do it for The Rock. He did it for The Rock. That's, you know, you're my cousin. I ran over this man for you. So, you solved that crime, but then a month later, they do the angle where Vince basically like chastises you on TV. They write you off, and everything's set for Vince McMahon versus Mick Foley. It's all set. This is December 2000. You're written off TV because you're having a kid, and everybody thinks that's where it's going. And in the end, we get Shane versus Vince, which there are a lot of issues with that match, with the mother who's drugged, and there's a lot that I love about that match. But and you're the referee. But that was supposed to be your match. Can you talk a little bit about the writing you off TV and it not being you at WrestleMania?
Yeah, man. I was really a stickler for details. I didn't like holes in storylines. And I thought the idea of coming back and demanding my job back was not realistic. I was like, it's his company. And he's allowed to fire me. We got 200 people here, right? Maybe one of you would have thought a tiny bit less of me if I had exercised my right to come back for that match. Like, it was overthinking, you know? I could have easily come back, and it would have been a big match, and it would have been a good money match, like a really good money match. What it came down to was that I really, at that time, took that retirement stipulation seriously, and I was hell-bent on never wrestling again. Like, if I'd known that I was going to come back another 14 times and make a mockery out of that stipulation, I certainly would have cashed in 2001 and wrestled Vince, you know, and it wouldn't have necessarily been a great technical match, but we would have had a heck of a storyline. I think it would have been a tremendous payoff. And more importantly, I wouldn't have become like the boy who cried wolf, the Mr. McMahon. And I don't think my relationship I used to call him Vince, you know, I called him Vince. And now I even refer to him as Mr. McMahon, even when I see him. Hello, Mr. McMahon. So yeah, it hurt that relationship, cost me a lot of money, and would have been a good match to have on a great WrestleMania.